At my husband's family BBQ, his sister joked, "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." Everyone laughed except me. I just lifted my hot dog and said, "Challenge accepted." That night, I packed up, left, and cut all contact. A year later, I'm the one who's forgotten them. At my husband's family barbecue, his sister made a joke. "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." Everyone laughed, except for me. I just raised my hot dog and said, "Challenge accepted." That night, I moved out, cut all contact, and vanished. A year later, who's forgotten now? I'm Vanessa, 34, and despite 7 years of marriage to Gregory, I always felt like an outsider in his family. Last summer, at their annual barbecue, I was hoping things would finally be different. But Gregory's sister, Amanda, had other plans. While everyone was gathered around the picnic table, I tried to share some news about my graphic design work. Amanda cut me off with a smirk. "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." The whole table erupted in laughter. Even Gregory, I just locked eyes with her, raised my hot dog and said, "Challenge accepted." I moved out that night. So, what happened when I reappeared a year later? Gregory and I met during our senior year of college. I was studying graphic design and working part-time at a coffee shop to cover tuition. He was finishing a business degree, fully funded by his parents. We connected during one of his late-night study sessions, bonding over a book I was reading behind the counter. Our romance was a whirlwind. Within 3 months, we were inseparable. And by graduation, he proposed with a ring that cost more than my entire student loan debt. I was swept away by his charm, his intelligence, and what felt like genuine love. When we got married a year later, I thought I was gaining not just a husband, but a new family. The Caldwells were everything my family wasn't: affluent, well-connected, and tight-knit in their own way. Gregory's father, Richard, had built a successful marketing firm from the ground up. His mother, Patricia, managed their social calendar with military precision while serving on 3 charity boards. His sister, Amanda, was already a junior executive at their father's company. And Michael, the younger brother, was the family rebel who still managed to land a cushy job at an uncle's investment firm. My background couldn't have been more different. Raised by a single mom working 2 jobs, my sister Olivia and I learned the value of a dollar and the dignity of hard work. Holidays were about homemade gifts and potluck dinners. Visiting the Caldwell's sprawling home felt like stepping onto a movie set. The class difference was always there in subtle but persistent ways. Patricia would call my design work acute. Hobby Richard would explain basic business concepts to me, even though I'd run my own freelance business for years. Amanda would helpfully correct my pronunciation of wine varieties with a sickly sweet smile. "They mean well," Gregory would always say. That's how she shows love. But Amanda's love felt more like a slow poison. At our wedding, her maid of honor speech was filled with stories about Gregory's ex-girlfriends. When we bought our first house, she questioned if the neighborhood was a good fit for a Caldwell. When I landed a major client, she wondered aloud if it was because of Gregory's family connections. Still, I tried. How I tried! I volunteered for Patricia's charities, referred clients to Richard's firm, and remembered every birthday with a thoughtful gift. I laughed at their inside jokes even when they stung. I dressed the part, adopted their slang, and swallowed my working-class pride. For the first few years, I kept my freelance business going. But when Gregory's job required more travel, it was just assumed I'd scale back. My business dwindled, my world narrowed, and I became more isolated, orbiting his family's judgmental son. Last spring, I had a miscarriage at 11 weeks. The emotional pain was worse than the physical. Gregory was in Chicago and offered to come home, but seemed relieved when I said I could manage. Tricia sent flowers with a note saying, "Perhaps it's for the best until you're more settled." Amanda suggested the stress of my little business might have been a factor. Only my sister Olivia came to stay, bringing soup and sitting with me while I cried. The contrast between her genuine care and my in-laws' clinical distance cracked something inside me. But I buried it deep. just another disappointment to swallow. By the time the annual barbecue rolled around, I was a diminished version of myself, clinging to the hope that I could finally earn their acceptance. The Caldwell Summer Barbecue was a neighborhood institution. Patricia planned the menu for weeks. Richard showed off new grilling gadgets and their perfectly manicured lawn filled with friends and business associates. It was an event to display status, and I was still firmly an outsider. That morning, I spent 3 hours making my grandmother's strawberry shortcake. When we arrived, Gregory rushed me out of the car, reminding me to act impressed with his dad's new smoker. Amanda spotted us and, after air kissing Gregory, gave me a quick once-over. "Vanessa, that dress is so cheerful," she said. "The kitchen's getting crowded, but I'm sure you can find somewhere to put your contribution." She swept Gregory away before I could respond. In the kitchen, Patricia waved me off. "Oh, Vanessa dear, you didn't need to bring anything. We have the patisserie." Handling desserts. I placed my shortcake in the pantry on a shelf crowded with other unworthy offerings, and overheard her telling a server to make room for Amanda's authentic tiramisu. The next 2 hours were a blur of polite smiles and dead-end conversations. Unlike me, Michael's wife, Charlotte, a pediatric surgeon, was paraded around and praised, even though she looked just as uncomfortable with the attention as I was with the lack of it. When we finally sat down to eat, I found myself next to Gregory's hard-of-hearing uncle. Seeing a lull in the conversation, I tried to jump in. "I just finished a branding project for that new bakery downtown," I offered. Amanda's eyes narrowed. "How nice is that? The place with the tacky neon sign." "The signage is actually vintage-inspired," I explained. "The owners wanted to ... If you disappeared tomorrow," Amanda interrupted with a theatrical sigh, "no one would even notice." Ha! 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 That's how boring this conversation is. The table erupted in laughter. Patricia tittered, Richard guffawed, and even Gregory chuckled. The sound was like cold water shocking my system. My face burned. In that moment, 7 years of slights crystallized into perfect, painful clarity. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. Instead, I raised my hot dog in a mock toast, met Amanda's gaze, and said clearly, "Challenge accepted." A brief, confused silence fell over the table before Patricia chirped, "Who's ready for brisket?" And the moment passed. For the rest of the afternoon, I observed. I watched how icily they all moved through their world, and I listened to the quiet voice inside me that had been whispering for years, now finally shouting, "You deserve better." The drive home was silent. "Everything okay?" Gregory, finally, asked, "You've been off since lunch." I chose my words carefully. "Amanda's joke about me disappearing. Did you think that was funny?" He sighed. "Don't start. Amanda was just being Amanda." "You laughed," I said simply. "It was a joke, Vanessa." Not everything needs to be analyzed to death. He got out of the car, ending the conversation. That night, as he slept, I stared at the ceiling and replayed our entire marriage. I remembered the ambitious designer I used to be. I had started to believe their subtle message that I was lucky to be there, that my worth was determined by them. At 2 a.m., I slipped out of bed and went to my home office. By dawn, I had a plan. The moment Gregory left for a golf game with his dad, I started moving. I called my college roommate, Jessica. "I need a massive favor," I said. "I'm leaving Gregory." 2 hours later, she arrived with coffee and boxers. We worked quickly, packing only the essentials: clothes, documents, keepsakes, and my design equipment. I transferred exactly half of our joint savings to my personal account, paid my share of the bills, and made a list of services to cancel. Alone in the house, I wrote Gregory a simple letter. I said I needed time away and had taken only what was mine. I asked for space and no contact. On top of the letter, I placed my wedding ring. Next to it, I left a note with Amanda's joke, written verbatim. Before walking out the door for the last time, I glanced at our wedding photo. We looked so happy, so full of hope. "Goodbye," I whispered, and I didn't look back. Driving away was both terrifying and exhilarating. With every mile, the tightness in my chest loosened. I checked into a modest hotel, and for the first time in years, I breathed freely. When I briefly turned on my phone the next morning, the messages from Gregory came in predictable waves. Confusion, irritation, concern, then anger. Where are you? This is ridiculous. You're being incredibly selfish. Not once did he mention Amanda's joke. I texted my mom that I was safe, then turned my phone off and started searching for an apartment in Seattle, where Olivia lived. The challenge was accepted. Now came the hard part, untangling myself from the identity of Gregory, Caldwell's wife, and finding out if I could build a life where my own presence mattered. Seattle welcomed me with 3 days of rain washing away my old life. Olivia found me a small, furnished studio in her neighborhood. It was tiny, but it felt like a snug cocoon. It was all mine. That first week was a blur of practicalities, a new bank account, a new phone number, updated freelance profiles. Gregory's messages shifted from anger to bargaining, but I maintained my silence out of self-preservation. Every time I considered responding, I remembered the laughter at that picnic table. Instead of looking back, I focused on rebuilding. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. What Amanda said wasn't the cause, Dr. Lewis told me. It was the catalyst. She was right. By my second month, I had 3 steady design clients. The work was simple, but it paid the bills and, more importantly, rebuilt my confidence. 1 day I walked into a local coffee shop and fell in love with a wall mural. The owner, Eleanor, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair, ended up hiring me to redesign her menus. "Show me your personal work," she said, waving away my professional portfolio. "The stuff you do because you can't not do it." I hesitated, then showed her designs I hadn't looked at in years, experimental, impractical, and authentically me. "You've been hiding," she said, her blue eyes sharp. "These are really good." She hired me on one condition, that I create one personal piece every week. "I don't care if it's good," she told me. "I care that you're finding your voice again." Eleanor became more than a client. She was a mentor. Through her, I connected with other local business owners, and my calendar filled with projects that engaged me. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings moved forward with clinical efficiency. I checked Gregory's social media once. It was at a company event with a woman I didn't recognize. Amanda had posted a family photo captioned, "Missing no one." The confirmation stung less than I expected. It was liberating. My disappearance had barely caused a ripple, and that meant I was no longer defined by their perceptions. 6 months after I left, the divorce was final. Gregory's only personal note said, "I still don't understand, but I won't fight you anymore." That night, I stood in front of my mirror and cut my hair into a modern bob. The woman staring back at me had a clarity in her gaze I hadn't seen in years. By the 8th month, my business had grown so much I rented a desk in a creative cope. On the 1-year anniversary of my departure, I was no longer invisible. I had built a life where my voice was heard and my contributions were valued. Challenge had been met, but the story wasn't over. Exactly 1 year after the barbecue, an email arrived from a top agency, Westwood Creative. They had seen my work and wanted me to pitch for a national campaign for Sheffield Consumer Brands, a subsidiary of Caldwell Marketing Group, Richard's company. It felt too precise to be a coincidence. My mentor, Eleanor, was pragmatic. "The question isn't whether they know who you are," she said. "The question is whether the project is worth it." The budget was double anything I'd ever handled. I accepted the initial meeting. This was a Caldwell power play I wanted. To face it head on, the meeting with Westwood was completely professional. There was no indication they knew my history. I accepted the project, and for 3 weeks everything went smoothly. Then came the announcement. The rebranded line would be unveiled at the annual Marketing Innovation Gala. My attendance was highly encouraged. It was a huge career opportunity and exactly the kind of event the Caldwells would never miss. You have 3 options, my therapist said. Decline, attend, and hide, or attend and prepare to engage on your own terms. A year ago, I would have hidden. But I wasn't that person anymore. The night of the gala, I felt unexpectedly calm. I wore a tailored emerald jumpsuit that was both sophisticated and distinctive. The woman in the mirror looked ready. At the event, I was deep in conversation with a magazine editor when I felt a shift in the room's energy. I didn't need to turn to know the Caldwells had arrived. Richard's booming laugh confirmed it. A few moments later, our eyes met across the crowded room. Gregory's widened in unmistakable shock. I held his gaze for a second, then deliberately turned my attention back to the bartender. Richard approached me first. "Vanessa," he said, his tone neutral. Quite a surprise. "Richard," I nodded. "I'm the lead designer for the Sheffield rebrand." He blinked, momentarily thrown. "Your work has evolved," he said, reassessing me. "Not evolved," I corrected with a small smile. "Returned to its authentic direction." Just before the presentation, Amanda stepped directly into my path. "Vanessa, no one mentioned you were involved?" "I'm working with Westwood Creative," I said calmly. Her smile tightened. "We're family, actually, or we were." The presentation was a blur. I spoke about design, philosophy, and consumer connection, my voice steady and confident. From the stage, I could see the Caldwells. Richard nodded at the metrics. Patricia maintained a neutral face, and Gregory never took his eyes off me. Afterward, I was surrounded by people exchanging business cards, feeling the sweet vindication of professional validation earned entirely on my own. Eventually, Gregory approached me alone. "You look well," he said. "I didn't know you were." "In Seattle, that was intentional." He nodded, accepting it. "Your presentation was impressive. You always were talented." "I always am talented," I corrected gently, in the present tense. He looked down. "I've thought a lot about what happened. About Amanda's joke. I didn't understand then, but this past year. I miss you." The words I once desperately longed to hear now arrived too late. "I'm glad to hear you've been thinking," I said, meaning it. I felt no triumph, just a calm certainty that I'd made the right choice. He asked if we could get coffee the next day to talk. I weighed the request and agreed to half an hour, a professional courtesy. The next day at the workshop, our brief coffee meeting was surprisingly cathartic. "I've been in therapy," Gregory admitted. "It's helped me understand how I failed, to see what was happening to you, how I didn't stand up for you." The apology was disarming, a glimpse of the man I once loved. "I thought a lot about that barbecue," he said. "About your words, challenge accepted. I realize now you were declaring independence from all of us." We talked for nearly an hour. In my absence, the family dynamics had shifted. He was finally seeing things clearly. "Is there any chance for us?" he asked finally. I looked at his face, once the center of my world, and felt a quiet affection. "I think we both needed to become different people," I said gently. "And I like who I'm becoming now." He nodded, accepting it with grace. My final encounter was with Amanda. She approached me after the workshop, her expression a mixture of calculation and curiosity. "Did you take this project knowing it was connected to us?" she asked. "No," I answered honestly. "I found out after the contract was signed. So it's just a coincidence," she pressed. I had to smile. "That would be giving you far more space in my thoughts than has actually been the case." The bluntness landed. For the first time, she seemed to consider that she wasn't the center of my story. The joke at the barbecue, she said, her voice softer. I never thought you'd actually leave. It wasn't just a joke, Amanda. It was the articulation of something you'd been communicating for years, that I was dispensable. Her composure slipped. Gregory hasn't been the same, she murmured. Gregory is finding his own way, I replied. As am I leaving the hotel, I felt a strange lightness. The family that once loomed so large now seemed properly proportioned. Amanda's challenge had been not just accepted, but transcended. I had disappeared from their world only to reappear, transformed in my own. Sometimes we have to disappear from other people's stories to finally discover our own. The most powerful response to being unseen isn't to demand attention, but to build a life where your own presence is so full that external validation becomes irrelevant. The opposite of disappearing isn't being noticed. It's becoming so fully present in your own life that you can't be ignored. What's a moment in your life that, looking back, turned out to be a gift in disguise? Thanks for watching. Every day we find new stories that connect us, reminding us we are all on a unique journey. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it. Your thoughts help us grow. Till next time, stay curious.